Now being recorded. You will now rejoin the meeting.
Okay, you're live.
Okay. Hanif, are you here?
Joining the meeting.
Yeah.
Lynn Ryan.
Okay. Hi, Lynn. We're just doing a roll call.
Joining the meeting.
Okay. Peter Pecor.
Joining the meeting.
Tia Dorison.
Okay. So I got Hanif. Jeff Barker.
Yes.
Thank you. Dave Brooks.
I'm here.
Tim Brown.
I'm here.
Peter Hen.
Here.
Chris Johnston. No Chris yet. Ella.
Here.
Hold on. Andy.
Here.
I know Peter Pecor just got on. Zach.
Yes. Zach here.
Joe Rizzo.
I'm here. Good morning, everyone.
I know Lynn's on. Phil Smith. No. And I don't think Dave Zorn emailed me this morning. I don't think he was going to jump on. Just missing 3, so you have a quorum.
Joining the meeting.
Phil.
Phil's here. Good morning. We're just missing Chris and Dave.
Hi.
I don't know about staff though.
What staff is on?
Hi, Bridget's here.
Hey, Bridget.
Shan's here.
Shan,
Shan.
Phil,
Lydia.
and I know Theo's on. Okay.
And Phil's on too.
Yep. I got Phil.
Okay, in the conference room, you have Anna, Robin, Allison, and Rachel. And Peter, take it over.
Great. Thanks, everyone, for joining this morning. I want to call the meeting to order. First order of business is to review the minutes of our May 12th meeting. Answer any questions. If you have any questions, I'd ask for a motion to approve.
Honey.
Second. Joe Rizzo.
Thank you. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Kevin, I know you were on the phone there before. If you'll walk us through the labor report.
Sure. So I have the May 2020 report here. So this report covers our visits between May 1st and May 31st of 2020. During this period, we made 3 monthly site visits. We made 0 follow-up visits. We checked for residency with 17 workers. There were 0 non-compliant during that period. As of May 31st, all sites were in compliance. There were 0 new MCICD signs delivered. And to give you a brief update on the 2 projects we're auditing, I'll start with the Strom Museum, the Margaret Woodbury Strom Museum. They are about 3 weeks away from fully completing the parking garage. They have a pretty small crew on site, maybe 2 to 3 people per day as they finish that up. The actual expansion of the museum has been delayed for the time being. Still trying to get an update of when they're expecting to begin that. And then the other project is the St. Anne's home, and I've had difficulty inspecting that project. Well, due to a number of reasons. Certainly the nature of the project itself is, obviously a senior living and rehab community. There was an active COVID outbreak that happened to a couple of the construction workers the week of May 18th. And when that happened, they basically had to stop the project. Everyone was tested to make sure that they were okay. It's been difficult to gain access to that job, though. With that being said, I am updating with the project manager from Westesty weekly just to, get an idea of what's going on site. But obviously that's a little more delicate than some of these other jobs that we check.
Questions for Kevin?
All set here.
Kevin, thank you for joining us.
No problem. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
I believe we have Theo Finn from the Greater Rochester Housing Partnership on the phone. I think I heard that come across. Welcome, Theo.
Thank you.
If
Thank you.
you'd like to take us through the Make Monroe home piece that is in our board packet.
Sure. So yeah, I pretty much provided, an overview of the updates that I'll go over now. I don't know if everyone's familiar with our organization. We are a nonprofit. We've been operating in the city of Rochester for almost 30 years. Our mission is to finance and develop affordable housing in Rochester, Monroe County, and the broader Finger Lakes region. And we've been working with Monroe County and BOCES and a general contractor partner on the Make Monroe Home program for about 3 years now. And we're working on our second project under that program, the first, our second MCICD funded project under that program. The first project was the rehab of a vacant property at 4611 Mount Reed, working with the general contractor and BOCES students to have some really on-the-job, hands-on experience rehabbing a home that was then sold to a first-time home buyer, and that home was sold in February. So we were really excited to get through completion on that one. This particular project, our second project that we're working on, is slightly different. Every year, the Monroe 2 BOCES students working in the construction trade build a new construction home on campus. It's not a finished home, it's a nearly finished home that is typically auctioned off to a private buyer who then moves that house to a site where they want to install it, and they pay for the finishing on that site. We had the idea that doing a new build might be a nice second project, and that we could use the MCICD funding to purchase the home that was built on campus by the students last spring, move the home to a vacant county-owned site, and then give the students the opportunity to do the finishing work and to get some real-world experience that they can't typically get on campus, and to see the home that they started through fruition. And so we were ramping up to get that project going in the fall of last year. We kicked it off in January. The site that the house was put on is a site in the town of Clarkson at 3 Wedgwood Court. It's a county-owned lot. And prior to getting the students engaged, we had to have the foundation dug and a basement poured and built. And all of that was done in January and February. And at that same time, we were working with the BOCES instructors and administrators to plan for the student engagement to be, on site during their school hours to actually do the finishing work. We had a timeline of the students working on the project from, early spring through a June completion timeline. So all of this work would have been done during the school year. And then, as you all know, the pandemic hit and everything sort of got topsy-turvy in mid-March. The students were sent home and construction was halted. This particular project, didn't fit into a definition of construction that could continue. It is not specifically designated as affordable housing, and we didn't want to continue anyway without having worked out the student component, because this has a 3-pronged mission. The job training component is, first and foremost. The addressing vacant property component is the second mission, and then creating a home ownership opportunity is the third mission. And so we had to work through, what are our options as far as the student component. In mid-May, we were, able to get the construction starting again, but we weren't sure what to do, and we're still in a bit of a holding pattern. And so We connected with the BOCES administrators to talk through our options, and we have landed in a place where we think we can accomplish all of the goals while moving forward, as quickly as possible to ensure that the project gets completed. If we do not move forward now, and were to wait until the fall, there are some downsides to doing that. Some major downsides. For one, the neighbors are very eager to see completion. There are rumblings in the neighborhood wondering what's going on. The house is vacant. It's sort of counterproductive to what we're trying to achieve. If we leave the house sitting, some of the work that's been done could be compromised. The utilities are not on now, so with weather changes, the structure could be compromised, and the house is not secured. So having someone on site working on it is important to ensuring that the investment made so far and where we're headed is stabilized and maintained. And if we do delay further, there will be some carrying costs, additional insurances, additional taxes, other carrying costs that will drive up the cost of the project. And finally, we want to get the house completed and on the market as soon as possible to take advantage of what we know in terms of current market conditions to allow for showings this summer so that we can hopefully close with a buyer by the end of the year. So we're in this space where we want to move forward, also want to be able to integrate the job training piece. And the folks at BOCES, we vetted a couple of options, and they told us that the most valuable opportunity would be summer employment for some of their students. And the GC has expressed a willingness to create some summer job opportunities for some of their recently graduated seniors. We're structuring it so that there would be 4 summer jobs created for
Joining the meeting.
a student, for a student from each of the trades that would have been integrated into the completion. So the HVAC and plumbing, heavy equipment, carpentry, and electrical. So one of those specialties will be offered an opportunity. And we'd like to be able to, get that hiring process going basically, as soon as possible, and to get back on site as soon as possible. I was asked to give a brief overview of the budget and wanted to let you all know that with this change, we're still working within the established project budget. We did have some areas where we had estimated that we would be spending more than we actually did on some of the soft costs. And we did have a placeholder for a student co-op possibly over the spring break, or some ways that students could have been more intensively involved. And the total project cost with all of the soft costs, and including the moving of the house and the purchase of the house, the student engagement, and all of the typical soft costs that are in the project, as well as the construction costs, which entails items such as building the foundation in the basement. A garage will be built because that's required to comply with code in Clarkson and helps with marketability. There's some exterior enhancements to the structure that are being made to assist with better integration into the neighborhood and the surrounding properties, and then the interior finishing and site work. So our total development cost for the program is roughly $300,000. We're estimating that we'll be able to sell the home for at least $125,000. That's a conservative estimate, and we're just sort of hedging our bets to, in case there are any market changes between now and sale. And once the private funding comes in with the sale, then the MCICD investment will be about $186,000 into this project. So that's the update, and certainly open to questions. I know Phil's on the line. He and our construction specialist are definitely the gurus with respect to the construction work that's being done, and I would rely on him for those updates. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Theo. The acquisition cost in there, that is what was paid to BOCES?
Yeah, that actually it's a two-pronged piece. So we paid BOCES for the structure was $38,516, and our we have a placeholder for paying for the actual site but I don't think we're going to have to do that at the end of the day. So we're actually anticipating the acquisition cost will be less than this. So the 38,000, I'm hoping, is where we'll land, and then we'll have, you know, a lower MCIDC investment at the end of the day. We typically try to overestimate so that we don't fall short at the end of the project.
Other questions for Theo?
This is Joe Rizzo. Good morning.
Good morning.
So good morning. So what I heard you say is kind of looking at the estimated sales price and the funds from MCICD. So back to the uses here is that total development cost. That's the 311,820. That's a conservative. So you're confident the numbers should not exceed that for the overall project?
I would say yes. We're far enough into it that we have already, incurred actual costs. So, for example, we were estimating at the beginning what the cost of the move of the house would be, and we have already incurred that cost. The cost of building the foundation, and then the contractor, contract is in place with any major change orders having
Joining the meeting.
And the main change order was adding the garage and the exterior enhancements that have to go through a zoning board approval process. So that's a long way of saying yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Other questions? If not, Theo, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. I'm going to hang up.
Thank you.
Andy, if I've got you on the line here, if you wanted to review the executive committee report.
Sure, thanks, Peter. So the executive committee had a meeting, and the purpose of the meeting was to discuss basically the incremental funding that's necessary to complete the Make Monroe Homes project that we just heard described. Initially, the budgeted amount for the project by MCIDC was $130,000. It is $130,000. As you can see in your paperwork, approximately $186,000 in total are needed to complete the project, which represents, an incremental $56,000 plus or minus above the amount that we budgeted. I think $56,820. So the executive committee agreed that given the effects on the neighborhood, frankly, it's blighted. Apparently, there have been concerns expressed by neighbors that it remains not completed. And given that we started the project, it's in the best interest of everybody for us to approve an incremental $56,820 or so to the $130,000 that we budgeted for this, and to go forward with the completion of the project. And then, obviously, in years going forward, we can review or make decisions regarding any possible upcoming future proposals for these types of projects in the future. So it was the executive committee's belief that we would recommend to the board an incremental $56,820 to complete this project, and then take these on a project by project basis going forward. So that's
Andy?
Yes.
This is Joe Rizzo again. Good morning. When we talk about, just seems like in terms of how these projects work and these expenses here, we talked about this at previous board meetings. What is the thinking about MCIDC funds? We kind of looking forward here. It's a big jump in terms of what we budgeted for. Are we thinking something forward for the future that it would be just up to 50% matching funds or some reasonable, so it isn't kind of an open checkbook here that, what if we had something that was, $200,000 more from funds? What is the thinking from the executive committee, or do you need to kind of think about that further?
No, I think it's a fair characterization to say that people like the concept of getting students who are actually going to develop real world skills to get them to have real world experience. That's a positive, and not mutually exclusive. It's also the case that it seems like it's a relatively expensive program on a given dollar of investment, if you will. So the resolution was that we should complete this project since it's 3/4 of the way started with this incremental $56,000 or so dollars, and then look carefully at the structure and the amount of future proposals should they come forward for just the reasons that you're talking about.
Another quick question, Andy, is
sure.
When we work, and I'm all for this for students in terms of helping them in terms of skill set. I'm just kind of looking at kind of the numbers here and how these things kind of evolve. Are there some checkpoints where we say, okay, now we have this budget of 56, roughly whatever, $50,000 more. Are there some checkpoints here in terms of when they start to look at the budget and timeline and they're preparing the budget, that there are some checkpoints, or do we find out later on and say, okay, it ends up being this, and then we're gonna fulfill the difference here?
Well, I think it would be. I can't really speculate about the future. I know in this case, I think things were taken off track when the schools closed and the kids actually had to exit the program. I think the project needed to revert to some type of professional assistance to wrap the completion of the project, which was at a different dollar point than perhaps what would have flowed through had the students completed it themselves. I think in the future, it's been a long time since I've been in banking, but I think progress payments and budget that ties to specific aspects of the project being done is probably a pretty good way to proceed going forward if the board decides to do something like this. And it's probably also, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and I think it's also the case that getting additional involvement, perhaps a maximum percentage of funding or something of that nature with a cap would make sense. And construction is unpredictable. It's good that the kids have the experience. It's bad that the unpredictable nature of construction is such that oftentimes there's overruns and budget issues to deal with on it.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of, as you said, this one here, because of what's been happening in the pandemic, it's kind of a unique situation, and we're kind of deep into it here and kind of finishing it, and for the community and so forth. So there are other kind of benefits of finishing the project at this time. Okay, thank you very much. Milestones and so forth, something to consider with our kind of checkpoints here as you start to evolve and get into these projects. So, but thank you for thank you very much.
Sure. Is that all right, Peter?
That's great. I don't know if there are any further questions. In the absence of further questions, we're asking for a motion to approve an additional $56,000 to our original $130,000 budget for the Make Monroe Homes program for 2020 in this particular home.
Peter, this is Rachel. Could we just correct the motion to have it be for $186,000? The 130 was budgeted, but we'd like to have the board's approval on that in addition to budgeting for it.
The total Make Monroe Home program of $186,000 this calendar year.
Yes.
With an amended motion.
Okay, Lynn.
Thank you. I can ask for a second.
Bill Smith, second.
Thank you, Phil. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? or abstention? Motion carried. Greg, if we have you on the line, will you run us through the financial report?
Yep, I'm here. Good morning, everyone. So through May, through 5 months, you can see, net cash balance is down from obviously the year end, and I'll go through what the big chunks of that decrease is for in a second, but it's down about 850,000, and we'll talk about that and kind of reconcile that for you. Going down a little bit on our balance sheet, the revolving loan fund balances are all being paid. You can see there the new account for the emergency loan receivable account that we're tracking. We have spent 3/4 of the amount that has been committed so far through May. I'll let Anna give the outlook for the remaining 500,000. If you remember, we received $1 million from Comida, and we have committed the same amount of money to the program. Accounts payable, accrued liabilities, everything else is pretty consistent and as planned so far. So if we go down to our revenue and expenses, you can see our total of revenue, 97,000, is pretty close to what the budget and pretty close to last year. So that's certainly a good thing. We haven't really seen any changes yet from any effects of the COVID-19 issue. Overall, our expenses are down to what we have both budgeted and to last year. Totals, we spent 425,000 compared to a budget of 625, and last year about 502,000. So I think most of you were on the call last time that a lot of our economic development expense is going to be certainly reviewed and maybe eliminated in total to account for some of the additional spending that we had planned on for the emergency loan fund. So all in all, expenses are tracking well. They are, mostly all the bigger planned expenses are less than budget. Incentive programs, we feel like is going to even out as time goes down throughout the year. So overall, we think we're the initial projection is tracking to what our expectations are. As you can see, it shows that we have a $670,000 excess, but that also, as you can see, includes $1 million from the Comida piece. So net, if we want to normalize that, our operations are $350,000 of expenses over revenue, and again, which is certainly planned, certainly less than last year, and certainly less than budget. So again, just going back to the cash situation, if we just looked at, okay, why are we down 850,000? As you can see, 350,000 is from operations, and the remaining 500,000 is for the IC's share, I guess, if you will, of the emergency loan fund. So if we had to go back to the balance sheet and say, okay, hey, we were at 5.8, now we're at 4.95. That's kind of the normalization of the cash being down of where it is today. But again, all expected, and I think we have a good plan for the rest of the 7 months. That's all I got.
Thank you, Greg.
Questions?
Questions for Greg? Any update? We had a couple bonds out there that we're waiting for some movement in the rates in the bond market. Do we see either of those on the horizon?
Yes. University of Rochester is picking up working group calls this Thursday, And I believe the plan will be to close that in July at this rate. We have all necessary board approvals. What we need to do still is the TEFRA hearing. That's the hearing required under the code. And that is set to take place this Thursday, fully remotely. So that deal will pick up and close this summer. Cloverwood is a deal, as you recall, we approved in the spring. However, a year has passed since we did our TEFRA approval, and you need to close within a year of TEFRA, so that'll have to restart, and we'll have to have a new public hearing on that one. And then the final bond deal that is in motion is the Uncommon Schools, the prep school. That was put on hold. They didn't get the requisite city approval for one of the construction sites on Mark Street. And they sent out a tentative schedule to close July 22nd. That will, of course, be contingent on getting the requisite zoning board approval from the city on June 18th. So a moving target on that one, more so than the University of Rochester. But the tax exempt bond market is improving. High yield deals like this are coming back to the market slowly. And overall, the gain in jobs and the market uptick last week that we saw is improving market conditions. The other thing we typically see that may impact our future bond deals is that whenever there's discussion of income tax going up on the federal level, which I think there's discussion of, we do see an increased desire in investors to invest in tax exempt bonds because the income they earn off those bonds is exempt from federal income tax and state income tax, depending on your issuer. So a snapshot of the market in our bond deals.
Great, thank you for that update. Any other questions for Craig? Well, we'll move on. Anna, our emergency small business program.
Thank you. Yes, we're happy to report that we received 541 applications. We have approved 197 loans. 186 of those applicants have actually received their documents. 157 have received or will be receiving by next week the funds. So that's still in process. We, of course, closed the application on May 29th. There were a handful of applicants that requested less than $10,000, but the majority did request the full $10,000. Those applicants that requested less than $10,000, that range was between $5,000 and $8,500 for those. Per Lydia's update in our previous meeting, the majority of these applicants had on average about 15 or fewer FTEs and represent, by and large, salons, barbershops, restaurants and bars, tourism sector businesses such as a couple of hotels, and businesses that were most severely impacted by the pandemic early on. And we're happy to report that as we move to close out this program, we will have committed approximately $1,917,500. So we're not sure. We may not have extended all the way to the $2 million mark, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And as we move through phase 2 and enter phase 3, we're seeing many of these businesses allowed to open their doors to customers, restaurants offering alfresco dining, salons opening, and barbershops on a limited capacity. So it's our feeling that this did address an immediate need and bridge an important gap during a crucial time. And it's unfortunate we weren't able to approve all of the loans, so there There were some there were many applications that didn't qualify, but we think we did a good service to the community. So I want to express gratitude to the board for approving the funds, and of course Comida for chipping in, and to Lydia and the rest of the team here for moving the dollars out the door, and working diligently to get this program moving. And that's my update.
Thank you, Anna. And yeah, just on behalf of the board, I just second to you and your staff for creating and executing in such short order and doing it well. Any other questions from the board for Anna on the program?
I have a question. What was the, in general, I guess, why were applications of the 541 that weren't approved? Is it because they didn't have the correct information? What was the reasons? Or generally, what were the reasons?
Of course. So in general, so our application called for the submission of 2 quarters worth of New York 45s, indicating that the business had been operational for two consecutive quarters, and also indicating that the business had at least 1 full-time or part-time employee. So at least 2 people would be employed by the business. That was like the bottom threshold, up to 50 FTEs. So applications that came in from sole proprietors were not awarded funds, and applications that came in from businesses that hadn't been operational for those 2 consecutive quarters were not awarded funds. We also did receive a handful of we got a couple of applications from Ontario County. So, businesses that applied for the loan that weren't actually here in Monroe County. So that was another factor that we brought into consideration. And Lydia and Bridget and Raquel were fastidious in looking at businesses' property tax records and ensuring that the business owners were up to date on their property tax payments, and not in arrears. We worked with the budget office, the real property tax office here in the county, to ensure that.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Anna, thank you again. I'm going to move on to, I believe everyone received the SBA annual report. This is a separate email. Lydia, if you want to take us through.
Thank you.
And then at the end of Lydia's comments, I will be seeking a motion to approve the report.
Thank you. We are required by the SBA to provide an annual report, which we do every year. It summarizes what our general economic conditions are, what programs we offer. It includes our financial audit as well as our loan review. It lists our portfolio. It provides data on our board members in terms of, industry proficiencies, as well as the minutes from our board meetings and loan committee meetings. So it's really a snapshot of our entity relative to SBA 504. We submit this to our local office, and then it ends up with the Office of Risk Management, and they review it. It's a component part of our risk rating with the SBA, which is very good at a 1. So it's just our annual report, really a snapshot of what happened. We are required to survey jobs or businesses for job creation at the 2-year anniversary mark from funding, so it also includes that data. And certain businesses are not required to create jobs, of course, because of either women and minority-owned status or veteran status. So that's really what you're seeing here. Anybody have any questions? Glad to answer them.
Lydia, this is Joe Rizzo. Just a quick question. When you submit these reports, what kind of feedback, if any, do you receive from the reports and kind of questions and so forth, if any?
We haven't historically received any in recent past. You'll recall, in I want to say 2016, we did go through an audit, what they call a SMART audit, which is an intense audit. We supplied a great deal of information, and they reviewed it. We did very well there. Really, the only criticisms under that audit were some housekeeping issues. In addition to what this report is, annually there is an audit of our selected loan or loans in terms of closing and funding. So what they do is district councils from across the country get assigned certain portfolios. I think last year's ours was in Wyoming. Our district council that requested a certain, identified a loan, requested all the documents relative to funding of that loan. So Harris Beach has been great in supporting that effort. They usually are the transmitter because there's quite a few documents, and they have it in a very good organized state. So, and those audits also come out very positive. We've had very few issues in that. I think the only issues that we do have are things that have been procedural changes that were not generally publicized, but the SBA decided they wanted it done slightly different. Nothing of substance or materiality. So we really, we've not had any issues with it. So it's just it's similar to the Paris report, if you will, that we report to the state, both with the IDA and Comida. Really a snapshot of what's happened. And in our case, copies of our audit and loan review, which we had not loan review in 2018. We're required to have it every other year. So we hopefully contracting to do one later this year. Not sure how the COVID event will impact that. It may get delayed till 2021, but we've historically hired Dave Richards, who is a former banker, former economic developer, and has a consulting firm. He does a good job, very reasonably priced, comes on site for a bit, and then does a lot of work remotely.
Thank you. Silence on these things could be a good thing, and it sounds like these reports have been well received and so forth. So thank you very much, Leah.
Okay.
Any other questions for Lydia? I am requesting a motion to approve the SBA. Thank you, Peter.
Second, Joe Rizzo.
Thank you, Joe.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Lydia, do you want to make comments to the NAICS report?
Yes, since we're under SBA regs required to report a breakdown of our portfolio via the NAICS codes, and we have done so here. Our portfolio is about 28 million. Really pretty well diversified, I believe. We have about 5.5 million in manufacturing, 5 million in healthcare and related services. Other services which include, the car wash, the number of car washes in the portfolio is also about 5 million. And that's really it. It's just a breakdown of each loan and the current outstanding balance, issue date, etc. So, and percentages.
Any board members have any notes or further questions they'd like clarified?
Lydia, this is Pete. Lydia, this is Pete. Do we also have a separate report that gives us a past due status on the portfolio?
Yes, but we don't have any past dues. So there you are. We do look at that. I think we have one loan that is got a 30-day past due, but it is actually slightly less than 30 days. It's some fees that, how the SBA system works is if somebody has missed the payment and there's some late fees accrued, they they charge the late fees and take those before they find principal and interest payments. So in particular, a loan would show past due, even though it wasn't necessarily a full payment past due.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Great. We've come to the other business section. I don't know if there's anything out there folks would like to talk about. Anna, I didn't know if you wanted to address kind of the current things happening in our country and kind of sweeping the nation. I don't know if you have any comment on that.
Yes, thank you, Peter. So, of course, there's a great deal of civil unrest throughout it's not just a national issue now, it's spread across the globe. The Black Lives Matter movement has taken center stage, and the issue of police brutality is on everyone's minds. And that's, of course, top of mind for the county executive's office right now. How do we find solutions? How do we create a thoughtful response to the crisis? The Deputy County Executive for Health and Human Services, Corinda Crossdale, reached out to me and asked if there was a way for us, MCIDC, and your sister board, Comida, to come up with a program to address the crisis of the looting crisis. There are approximately 90 small businesses in the city of Rochester that were impacted, and a number of businesses in the town of Irondequoit, the town of Greece, and the town of Henrietta. And because we don't really have a grasp on the totality of the situation, I thought that it might make sense for us to engage with those individual municipalities and see if they wanted to come to us with a proposal for if we were to help reimburse some of the expenses associated with repair and a lot of offsetting the costs of permits and other fees that businesses would need to expend in order to reopen. But part and parcel with that, we also want to be thoughtful about promoting an anti-racism message. So perhaps if we were to partner with the city or the town of Irondequoit, we'd also want to help support those municipalities getting out of promoting anti-racism programming, perhaps through a municipal library or school system. So these are ongoing conversations, and I'm supposed to talk to the city of Rochester this morning at 11 o'clock about this. So at a future meeting, we may be approached by the city and potentially those other municipalities with requests for material support. Does anybody have questions or ideas or suggestions about this? I'm really open to the board's creativity, and as this is still kind of a skeletal idea. It doesn't really have, there's not much meat on the bones right now. I need your input. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts? You can also, you can contact me directly by phone or by email if you have your own ideas.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I would encourage all to give it that serious thought and reach out directly to Anna, see if we can't be part of the solution in some creative way. There being no other further business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn today.
Dave first moves.
A second, Andy.
Thank you, Andy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Again, thank you all for your time.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Peter.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Everyone.
Thank you.